Professor Chidi Odinkalu was the chairman, Governing Council of Nigeria's National Human Rights Commission. He's also a senior team manager with the Open Society Justice Initiative. You've been quite vocal about the political prisoners in the present government. There was a rumor, I think last week, where it was said that Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakazé had died in the custody of the DSS. However, it's important to note that he has been detained in violations of several court orders. What would have happened if the rumors were to be true?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm not a clairvoyant. I'm not Babalawo. I don't do practice juju, and I can't honestly tell you what would have happened if Sheikh Zakzaky had come if those rumors had proved accurate. So, like most well-meaning Nigerians, I like to think I'm well-meaning, and I'm obviously Nigerian. I'm relieved. Well, because when that broke, obviously some of us did make the efforts to clarify matters and then made efforts to try and pass that information across to other people. But it's one thing to be relieved about the fact that he's still alive. It's another thing, though, to look at the situation that the man has had to live with. Between 2014 and now, he's lost 6 of his sons, killed by the Nigerian state and agents of the Nigerian state. He is been held in detention since December 2015, so we're entering the 3rd year of detention. His wife, Zinat, is also detained. The Nigerian government has claimed alternately that Sheikh Zakzaky is held in protective custody, which does not exist under Nigerian law, that his wife is held in protective custody or in exercise of visitation rights in favor of her husband, who is held in protective custody that, I repeat, does not exist under Nigerian law, or that Sheikh Zakzaky is being held by the government because no one would agree for him to be his or her neighbor. And many of us have offered to be his neighbor, and the government has clearly not found us worthy of being Sheikh Zakzaky's neighbor, or perhaps they're trying to protect us from ourselves. The fact of the matter is that there is nothing under Nigerian law that authorizes government or anybody to hold anyone in detention in Nigeria without trial or charge for over 2 years. The maximum allowable under the Constitution is 48 hours. And everything that has happened in relation to the detention of El-Zakzaky and his wife is egregiously extra-constitutional.
Is there a place for the term protective custody in law?
No, it does not exist.
Colonel Sambo Dasuki, the former national security advisor in this country, is also in detention. How would you term this regime? Is it autocratic? Is this democracy? Where are we headed with this?
The fact of the matter is that a democracy should have room for every person, good, bad, ugly, terrible. You deal with everyone in accordance with law. So when people are terrible, you proceed against them in accordance with law. In Sambo Dasuki's case, he's got several court orders, including orders from the ECOWAS Court of Justice, which is headquartered in Nigeria, mostly funded by Nigeria, with a Nigerian judge, ordering his release in terms that quite clearly the Nigerian government appears to have found unacceptable, and in terms in relation to which the Nigerian government is simply not willing to ensure compliance. Now, all of this, of course, questions the commitment of the government, not just to rule of law, but in fact to fighting corruption, which is platform number one on which the government ran the elections. Because if you're unwilling or unable to respect orders of courts that you voluntarily subjected yourself to, you cannot fight corruption in accordance with law. And when you can't fight corruption in accordance with law, you're not able to fight corruption.
Let's talk about the El Zakazé issue again. 52 members of his Shiite movement were arrested this week, I think, when they protested in Abuja. About two of them, one was killed, okay. About 2 of them killed in Kaduna State, for instance. What does this say for religious freedom in the country?
Well, again, you've got to start somewhere else. In 2014, 36 of his members were killed by the Nigerian Armed Forces. In 2015, December, over 1,000 were either killed or disappeared, most of them while they were asleep, and basically mauled and destroyed as vermin, quite literally. And the Kaduna State government subsequently set up a judicial commission of inquiry, which looked into the matter. And according to the judicial commission of inquiry, this is not any NGO report, 375 dead bodies, dead Nigerians. The military killed at least 347 dead Nigerians in that operation. Now, after the killing, 6 trucks collected the bodies of 347 dead Nigerians. And in an operation that included over 47 soldiers, they took over 6 hours to bury these Nigerians in mass graves in Mando on the outskirts of Kaduna towards the airport. That's how terrible it is. And you ask yourself the question, what kind of government or what kind of country would kill and bury over 347 of its people in mass graves and not even bother to find out how that happened? And the only reason that this happened to Shiites is because they're Shiites. And the claim is that the Shiites, that's the organization is known as Islamic Movement of Nigeria, that the Shiites somehow don't respect the sovereignty of Nigeria, that they are, because they are Shiites and most of the holy centers of the Shiite faith are either in Iran or Iraq, that they have allegiance to those places, and forget that the Sunnis, many Wahhabis, also have their holy shrines in Saudi Arabia, and there's a lot of Saudi money, of course, flowing into all manner of places in promotion of their version of Islam. And white people not thinking that the Saudi people also owe allegiance to Saudi in the same way they allege against the Shiites, only they can say. But quite clearly there are problems with, it's not difficult to see that there is an issue of persecution on grounds of faith and sect in this. And the reality is that the Nigerian Constitution ordinarily prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion. And that a remedy has not been accessible to the Shiites, notwithstanding the fact that they have got lots of court orders which the Nigerian government has been unwilling to obey.
You are an advocate for free expression, and how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel when you listen or hear cases where journalists, entertainers are arrested across the country, from bloggers to professional journalists? Let's even go back to since 2015, Nigeria's Press Freedom Index. According to the World Press Freedom Index, the number keeps dropping for Nigeria. For 2015 alone, we were at 111. 2017, we went up to 122. And I don't know if you've heard the case of Elumba. He's a UK-based Nigerian journalist who was arrested by the DSS. And lots of cases across the country.
By the police?
Yeah, SARS.
Yeah, the Elumba brothers were arrested by the police.
Yeah. So
for an article that they actually didn't write. The article was written by somebody else.
On orders of the Inspector General of the Police.
Correct.
What exactly
team is still held.
is going on?
Oh, again, there's a pattern of impunity for persecution of people for exercising constitutionally guaranteed freedoms. And you can see a lot of that has been happening since particularly this administration. It started, I mean, a bit of it, on occasion you saw some incidents related to that under the last administration. It's continued into the current administration. It's happened at different levels, both federal and state. Akwa Ibom state government abducted a journalist from Abuja and took him to Akwa Ibom state. Ogun state has done the same thing with a blogger. In Bauchi state, we've had a blogger killed. And another, Musa Azare, was abducted from Abuja and taken to Bauchi by agents of the Bauchi state government on the orders of the Bauchi state governor while he was actually traveling out of the country. And the only reason why Musa probably survived was because of a lot of people rallied and he had access to people who had access to
I need to understand what's going on. You've mentioned bloggers, you've mentioned journalists.
Yes.
Who is complicit in all of this? Should we blame the security agencies?
I blame the state.
The commander-in-chief of the Federal
I blame
Republic
the
of
Nigerian
Nigeria?
state quite clearly. The intolerance, and of course you know the case of Audu Mekori. We went to court. I've been deeply involved, I've got to confess, in Audu's case. We went to court. We got court orders in favor of Audu. 40 million naira damages were awarded. In the last week, the Kaduna State government has served us with a notice of appeal, so we're going to the Court of Appeal. They're challenging the decision of the High Court on grounds, quite honestly, that I find spurious, but it's okay. We'll go to the Court of Appeal and let the courts decide.
Is there a deliberate plan to suppress dissent in the country?
I think so. And that is not allowed and that's not allowable. It's not just because the Constitution says so, it's also because there's a functionality to dissent. That if we don't have dissent, if we don't have alternative voices, then you don't have a democracy. If you don't have alternative voices, something else is wrong. You have mob rule. And we can't allow mob rule. That is totally out of the question. Even if it is one person that's saying something different, that is important. To act as a check, to act as a counterpoise, to enable people to see that things can be different.
Has the civil society been acting up to its responsibility, especially when it comes to this government?
I would have wished to see civil society, to be perfectly honest with you, do a little better than we are doing. Part of the reason, in my view, is that civil society took sides in the election in 2015. And in my view and in my analysis and modern analysis, to my knowledge, some of the sides that we took were taken for personal reasons. Because some of us wanted office and some of us were aspiring to be in charge of this or that or the other when our candidate won, when change happened, and when the other thing happened. And then in doing so, therefore, we compromise our standards, we compromise our credibility, and it's been difficult winning it back. I think some people are winning back their voices, but it's taking a while. And the problem with credibility, you see, people can disagree with you, but nevertheless respect you because they think, on the balance, sometimes you can get things wrong, but on the balance, they will not question your motives. But once you lose credibility, it is difficult to gain it back, particularly when they question your motives as less than altruistic. Not everybody will agree that your motives are altruistic. But if on the balance, most people do and see you as credible, and see you as a credible alternative voice who does proper homework, then that is all that you need. I think with civil society, quite a few people compromised their credibility, objectivity, and altruism in 2015 for short-term partisan calculations, and I think some of us are still paying the price now.
Interesting.
I'm being as honest with you as I can.
So you don't see us getting out of this anytime soon? Because when civil society members are, like you have described, somewhat were partisan when this administration came into office, then it's clearly giving them a pat in the back to do whatever they want to do, especially the security agencies, the government, those in public offices.
Now, you can see that. I mean, you and I were adults when President Jonathan was in office. I indeed was a public officer. And it was not the easiest thing holding to account the government in which one served. But that was the statutory responsibility I had. I wasn't the best friends with the administration. I was ordered arrested for saying, as far as I was concerned, the truth to the administration. And in April 3rd, 2012, as chair of the National Human Rights Commission, the Inspector General of Police had me arrested for doing my work, okay? And I was followed in Abuja quite often by security services. I was investigated many times by security services. But as far as I was concerned, it was not a popularity contest. There are standards, and as far as the standards are there, you've got to apply them. And irrespective of whose ox is gored. Now, my honest assessment is that those standards have either been desecrated or non-existent with respect to President Buhari, or with respect to the present administration. And on many fronts, people have simply given the government a bye. You know, the first thing, of course, was the president until the day after eternity, to constitute a cabinet. And this was a president who came in with an overwhelming mandate, an overwhelming goodwill, and it was frittered and spent on absolutely nothing.
Were you part of those who brought in President Buhari? The change, okay, you did describe...
I was chair of the National Human Rights Commission.
You did describe that some members of the civil society got involved at some point. Now I'm asking you personally, were you involved?
I did not have that luxury.
Okay.
The fact of the matter was, I was the chair of the National Human Rights Commission, and as far as I was concerned, I had a responsibility to make sure that the elections were as much as possible, as much as humanly possible, rigorously free and fair. And all candidates got an equal choice to put themselves to the Nigerian electorate. I do not have, yes, I've got my PVC, but as far as I'm concerned, I could not, as chair of the National Human Rights Commission, vote. Because that would be taking sides in that contest. You know, to vote, you had to vote for someone. So I made sure I did not even vote. Okay? That is how I saw my role. Would I do it again if I had? Absolutely, yes. So I did not have the luxury of making a choice between President Buhari and President Jonathan. But as far as I'm concerned, once that role was ended, I have a duty as a citizen to apply precisely the same standards to the current administration as we are available to be applied to the previous administration. If I apply those same standards, that means I've got to be able to be critical where it's necessary to be critical, and to hand out plaudits if there are situations that require the handing out of plaudits.
Okay, I wanted to go on with the civil society question, but at this point, I think I just have to walk away. Okay, let me ask you, oh, okay, I should go back there.
By all means.
Are you disappointed with the civil society community so far? Honesty. You have to be honest.
Now, I think it's not a black and white answer. On the one hand, civil society is ramified. You know, ICTs have ramified civil society. Lots of people who in the past, new technologies have made it possible for civil society to grow in ways that in the past wasn't possible. You see, in the past, there were people who were gatekeepers for free expression and for assembly and for protest. And you had to go to them to mobilize to do protests, okay? And you had to pay them, and we have to form a joint action committee, and then we'll start negotiating, and we had to bring in labor because they had the numbers, and that created its own dynamics. Now, we no longer need those mediators, those bottlenecks to... So you could see, for instance, the demonstration of 6th of February last year when the country was called out. First of all, it took a musician to galvanize the country, a musician who was not known particularly. What was Tubaba's claim to fame? African Queen, okay? Tubaba was exactly not Fela, let's be honest with you. But he galvanized their consciousness. Okay, so he chickened out under pressure, that's fine. But he did galvanize the consciousness, and we've got to recognize that. And it was a coalition that was built around new technology. You know, music, enough is enough. It was music and ICT platforms, okay? And we galvanized a community that was able to call attention to the deterioration in the country's governance in Lagos, in Abuja. I certainly was here in Abuja. Charlie Boy was there in Lagos. Lots of other people were there in between. And we did begin to get noticed. We didn't go, labor was not involved, okay? In all the organizing over the NGO bill, organized labor has not been involved. In the past, we could not have done it without NGO bill, without labor. Why has that been possible? Because we now have delivery vehicles and organizing vehicles that have enlarged the civic sector. That said, the traditional civic sector could have done better and can do better. And if you're talking about the traditional civic sector, the analog civic sector, as I'd like to call them, of course, yes. I think we could do better. And I think there have been failings in that respect. But again, we've got young people, lots of people coming through, and you've got individuals. Look at the work that Obi Ezekwesili has done. Like her, disagree with her, dislike her, you cannot but credit Obi and the work that she is doing and the leadership that she's providing, galvanizing a whole community of young actors. Look at what Aisha Osori is doing, okay, with her work on political parties and access to political parties. Now, you're having new formations of civil society in ways that were not possible in the past, and I think we should recognize that as a positive. And of course, young people also coming on board. Youth movements are springing up everywhere. Yaga, Code, you then have analytics like budget, like SBM intelligence. There are new formations every day and new voices, you know.
So it's not over.
No, I don't think, quite the contrary. I feel inspired. You know, when I listen to voices like Yadoma Mandara, for instance, okay, in Borno, for instance, or Hamzi, you know, or, you know, voices like Cynthia Mbamalu. Yes, I feel, or Chioma Gwebo, you know, at Chioma Chuka, or indeed, you know, at Kalesi, you know, I feel that this country has got possibilities, and we certainly
Let's talk about the killings across the country. You just left Taraba when I called you last, when we had a conversation about this interview. There have been killings in Taraba, Benue, Adama, Kaduna, and the conversation has been headsmen. And the headsmen are also saying, no, it's not just us. They're also stealing our cows. I mean, Benue State publicly buried 73 persons, including pregnant women, children, and whatnot. Where are we headed from here, and where are we going? Especially for victims from boot camps.
Now, we could go on about this, but the first thing I'd like to suggest is we should all bury our heads in collective shame and grief. That's the first thing. You're not talking about tens of Nigerians killed. You're talking about thousands of Nigerians killed. And in Benue State alone, over 1,700. In Adamawa State alone, over 800 have been killed. In Taraba State, while I was there, 52 people were killed in Lao. Okay, in Numan, I don't know how many people were killed in Numan and buried. And in Southern Kaduna, I don't know the number of burials I've attended. A traditional ruler I met in Southern Kaduna, was it 2 years ago, was killed on New Year's Day with his wife and child. The legislator who provided me with accommodation, even while he was kidnapped in Taraba, his body was discovered 2 days after I left Taraba. All right? Now, you cannot deal with this situation without recognizing the enormous human tragedy that is taking place across our communities. And the biggest problem I see is the failure of emotional intelligence in government. The failure to persuade people that it cares and it feels our pain. You know, when entire families have been wiped out, and I don't care. You see, you also see the breakdown when we no longer care about human beings being killed, and what bothers us is whether they are Fulani or Beram or Tiv or Anaguta or Bachama, that is problematic. Whether they are Christian or Muslim, whether they are those other people or us, not whether they are human. And government is behaving as if this is a non-issue or if it is normal. It isn't.
Is there a political will from President Buhari to fix this?
Absolutely not. I haven't seen it. If it exists, then he's hiding it very well. Now, first of all, I cannot understand why Nigerians are killed in vast numbers in Taraba, killed in Adamawa, killed in Benue, killed in southern Kaduna, and President Buhari is holed up in Kaduna, in Abuja. What's he doing? I'm sorry. He's here to protect Nigerians. And when Nigerians are being killed in this way, if nothing else, he should show up. If he doesn't show up, he should send a representative. Now, all of these people were killed in Numan. He didn't show up for their burial. He didn't say nothing that I heard. People get killed in Lao, and Numan and Lao are on opposite sides of the Adamawa-Taraba border. And what's happening? The people fleeing from Numan get into Lao and things happen, okay? And the president doesn't show up. He doesn't send anybody to commiserate. The vice president, I know, after the Numan killings, started a conversation of, I presume, under the direction of the president, with a view to getting the Pachama and the Fula to start talking and figuring out how they were, and the Watiye, and to start talking of finding how they are going to engage on that issue. But it is not just the Pachama, Watiye, Fula issue. It is a regional issue, okay? And at the moment, government does not have the convening authority because a lot of people feel it has squandered that convening authority. And it has squandered it because it's not showing up with emotional intelligence. It's not showing up with emotional intelligence because it's not showing compassion or empathy. President Buhari is not visiting any of these places where this has happened personally. Rather, it is the victims coming to visit him. What is he doing as president? I'm sorry, I can't understand it. Now, what happens, because it's a huge opportunity, as much as tragic as these things are, they also provide a huge opportunity for him to show he cares and for him to show he is involved, he wants to be involved in trying to create a different narrative. By showing up, because if he had been there in Benue State, even or sent a representative, even as bad as feelings were, they would have said representative of the president. Okay? They would have acknowledged the person. But nobody showed up.
Why do you think the president is not showing empathy? Is it because people have argued that
he alone can explain.
Fulani, and the Fulani people are saying, oh, well, our people died, he wasn't there as well.
That's what I've told you, people were killed in Numan. Most of the people who were killed in Numan were Fulanis, if not all. The Fula have been chased away from Numan, quite literally. Okay? Now, that's the point. Now, this is the point I'm making. I'm not going to get involved in the conversation about our people were killed because every Nigerian is President Buhari's person. So it's immaterial whether once a president gets involved or gets caught in the perception of being involved in that kind of mindset, he's destroyed. His authority is destroyed. He cannot afford to be put in the position of being portrayed as your people, my people. Every Nigerian, whether you're 97% or you're 5%, to use his words, you are President Buhari's person. So what happens to you should bother him. And according to our constitution, the protection of the people is the primary responsibility of the president. And as far as I'm concerned, the president has failed in that primary responsibility. And I was asking a friend who is English today. I said, Ollie, if you're talking to me and telling me Nigerians are ranting, because this was the expression he used when he talked about Nigerian ranters. And I said, look, tell me, if you had a situation in which 1,700 people were killed in Yorkshire, okay, and your government was dossing and doing nothing about it, and it would, English people talking in that context about getting their government, anything they want to do with their government, be described as ranters by you. Don't patronize me. I find what you're saying offensive. And I genuinely do. I cannot quarrel with any Nigerian who is angry in this situation. I am, because the people being killed are my people. And I don't see the government has done anything about what's happening to them.
Thank you, Professor Odinkale.
You're welcome.